When Moses Malone died in 2015, the basketball world lost one of its greatest champions. But this is not a story about his death. This is a story about why NBA legends still describe him as the most terrifying player they ever faced. In 1983, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar stepped onto the court for the NBA Finals. 4 games later, he looked scared and beaten down. The man responsible was Moses Malone. He was nuts, and every legend who played against him has a story to tell. Kareem built his career on elegance. He had the skyhook, the most unstoppable shot in basketball history. For over a decade, he dominated with technique and grace. Then came Moses Malone, and grace meant nothing anymore. In the 1983 Finals, Moses made Kareem look helpless. Over 4 games, Moses grabbed 72 total rebounds. Kareem grabbed just 30. Moses averaged 18 rebounds per game, while Kareem managed 7.5. And here's the scary part. Moses wasn't just grabbing rebounds to clear the ball. He was grabbing them to score immediately. He had 27 offensive rebounds in that series. Moses turned every missed shot into a second chance for his team, and Kareem couldn't stop him. Analysts who watched the series said Moses relentlessly bullied everyone in the paint. He made Kareem look scared. Moses refused to let Kareem play his game. Every time Kareem tried to set up his signature move, Moses was already on him, leaning, bumping, displacing him before the ball even arrived. Kareem later admitted that Moses was too physical and too rough. He complained that Moses never let him set up. That's why Moses was so terrifying. He didn't just beat you, he took away your ability to even try. The 76ers had acquired Moses specifically to beat the Lakers. They knew finesse couldn't beat finesse, so they brought in a sledgehammer. Before the playoffs started, Moses made his famous prediction: faux, faux, faux. 3 sweeps, no losses. The Sixers went 12-1 in the playoffs, and in the finals they delivered a perfect sweep. Moses averaged 25.8 points per game, but the numbers don't capture the psychological warfare. Moses won the finals MVP, but more importantly, he broke the spirit of the greatest center in NBA history. Julius Erving, Dr. J, was the leader of the 76ers and one of the most celebrated players in basketball. But when Moses arrived, Dr. J voluntarily stepped back. Moses is the man, Irving stated. He's taken over the title from Kareem as the best center in the league. Dr. J admitted that Moses was the alpha. Irving said that if Kareem couldn't guard Moses and he was the best player in NBA history, then none of those other guys could have. That's the terrifying truth. Moses was unstoppable, and everyone knew it. Before Moses destroyed Kareem, he had already proven himself as a physical force. In the 1970s, Moses was a teenager playing against grown men in the ABA. The ABA was rough, full of enforcers. Most thought a high school kid would get destroyed. Moses proved them wrong. One shocking moment came when Moses faced George McGinnis. McGinnis was a beast, built like a linebacker. During one game, McGinnis was cutting across the free throw line, minding his own business. He didn't see the threat. Why would he? A teenager doesn't threaten a veteran like George McGinnis, but Moses didn't follow the rules. He stepped into McGinnis's path and delivered a hip check with so much force that it nearly knocked McGinnis off his feet. McGinnis turned around, ready to fight, but when he saw the hit came from a 19-year-old rookie, his rage disappeared. It was replaced by wonder. McGinnis realized this kid had a strength that didn't make sense. Moses looked lean and high-cut, but he had a mysterious, wiry strength that felt more like a machine than muscle. McGinnis recognized that Moses possessed a density of strength that defied his age. The kid wasn't trying to be cheap. He was just occupying space with a force that couldn't be moved. That moment defined Moses Malone's reputation. He wasn't dirty, he wasn't flashy, he was just relentlessly physical, and no one could push him around. Moses didn't just terrify his opponents, he also used terror as a teaching tool, and no one learned this lesson harder than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. In the early 1980s, the Fonde Recreation Center in Houston was a legendary proving ground. NBA pros and top college talent played pickup games there. It was a place to test yourself against the best. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then a raw prospect at the University of Houston, walked into that gym and met Moses Malone. Moses was the reigning MVP of the Houston Rockets. He saw potential in the young African player who had a soccer and handball background. But Moses didn't mentor with kindness. He mentored with brutality. Kareem recalled that with Moses, there were no rests, no breaks. Moses played pickup games with a sadistic level of intensity. He scored, rebounded, and made Kareem feel his body on every single possession. The psychological terror was real. Moses would laugh when he slammed his heavy frame into the lighter, lankier Abdul-Jabbar. If you tried to take a breath, he went by you or over you, Kareem said. There was no stop. Kareem's background in soccer gave him agility but left him unprepared for the sheer violence of American post play. Moses recognized this and decided to fix it through pain. Every day, Moses would physically assault Hakeem in those games, and every day, Hakeem had no choice but to adapt. Here's the fascinating part. Hakeem Olajuwon became one of the most skilled centers in NBA history because of Moses Malone. Hakeem's celebrated footwork, his finesse, his dream shake, all of it came from trying to survive Moses. Because Hakeem couldn't move Moses physically, he was forced to develop agility and speed to go around him. The dream shake wasn't just creativity, it was an adaptive response to an immovable object. Ralph Sampson, Hakeem's teammate on the Rockets, said it plainly. Moses taught Hakeem Olajuwon everything he knows. The terror Moses inflicted at Fonde was a form of love. He was preparing Hakeem for a league that would show him no mercy by showing him none first. And it worked. Hakeem later said he would never have accomplished what he did if he didn't play against Moses. But Moses wasn't done teaching through terror. When Charles Barkley entered the NBA, he was a mess. He was a 6'4" power forward who weighed nearly 300 pounds. Despite his talent, he was struggling to find playing time. He was at risk of eating his way out of the league before his career truly began. So Barkley approached Moses, the veteran star on the 76ers, and asked a simple question. Moses, why am I not getting to play? Most mentors would have offered something encouraging. Wait your turn. Keep working hard. Moses didn't do that. He looked at Barkley and said something that changed his life. You're fat and you're lazy. Barkley was shocked. He replied, I don't understand that. Moses didn't blink. Which part? The fat or the lazy part? You fat and you lazy because you are fat. This was the terrifying accountability Moses demanded. He didn't coddle the rookie. He identified the flaw and attacked it directly. But unlike a bully, Moses didn't stop there. He told Barkley, you want to work hard? I'll help you. And he did. Moses created a weight loss plan for Barkley. Lose 10 pounds, then lose another 10, and another. Moses broke the goal into small, achievable steps. Barkley started at around 290 to 300 pounds. Moses told him to get to 280, then 270, then 260, and finally around 250. At each stage, Barkley felt himself getting better. The context of Barkley's weight gain was rooted in poverty. Barkley admitted that he and his teammate Leon Wood would take their per diem meal money, which was about $100 to $110, and go to McDonald's. They would spend $30 on massive amounts of food and pocket the remaining $70. Moses recognized that Barkley was treating his body like an amateur while trying to play a pro game. So Moses intervened. And it worked. Barkley frequently refers to Moses as dad. He cites him as the most important person in his professional life. He credits Moses with saving his career. The intimidation Moses used was rooted in integrity. He terrified people because he told them the truth they were avoiding. And for Barkley, that truth transformed him into the round mound of rebound. Now let's talk about comparisons. In modern basketball, Dennis Rodman is often cited as the ultimate rebounding specialist. His flamboyance, dyed hair, and erratic behavior made him a cultural icon. But those who played against both Moses and Rodman say Moses was far more terrifying. The distinction comes down to consequence. Dennis Rodman grabbed rebounds to end opponent possessions. He was a defensive genius who reset the offense or triggered fast breaks. He was a nuisance, a pest, and brilliant at positioning. But Moses Malone grabbed rebounds to score. Bob McAdoo, a Hall of Fame scorer and former MVP, explained it perfectly. Dennis Rodman gets an offensive rebound. You don't worry about it. Moses gets a rebound, he's going to put it back in. Bet on it. What are your thoughts on Moses Malone's mentorship style? Do you think tough love like his would work in today's NBA? Drop your answer in the comments below. This created a visceral type of fear. With Rodman, the fear was frustration at a lost possession. With Moses, the fear was immediate scoreboard damage. Moses was described as hell to face because he was a relentless offensive engine. If you failed to box him out, you didn't just lose the ball. You gave up points, likely incurred a foul, and then had to watch him shoot free throws. The statistics prove this point. Moses Malone holds the all-time record for offensive rebounds with 6,531. That's nearly 2,000 more than the second-place player, Artis Gilmore. And it's over 2,400 more than Dennis Rodman. To put that in perspective, a player would need to average 3 offensive rebounds per game for 10 full seasons just to cover the gap between Rodman and Moses. That's not just impressive, that's historically impossible to replicate. Even the Detroit Pistons bad boys, a team built on terror and violence, recognized Moses as a superior physical force. Rick Mahorn, the self-proclaimed baddest bad boy, listed Moses alongside Patrick Ewing and Charles Barkley as the players he had to prepare for mentally and physically every night. There's video evidence of Mahorn delivering a violent hard foul to Moses, a clothesline-style hit that would result in a suspension today. Moses absorbed the blow with the calm of a tank. He barely acknowledged the pain. This level of resilience frustrated opponents like Bill Laimbeer, the Pistons center. Laimbeer led the league in rebounding in 1986, but he admitted that Moses had held a stranglehold on the rebounding title for years. Laimbeer could agitate Larry Bird. He could fight Robert Parrish, but he could not outwork Moses Malone. So what made Moses so terrifying? It wasn't just his strength, it was how he used it. Moses was famous for his ability to jump multiple times in rapid succession. While other centers needed to gather themselves, bend their knees, and explode upward, Moses could land and immediately spring back up. He would often miss a shot intentionally or miss due to heavy contact, only to land and jump again before the defender could recover. This pogo stick ability meant that guarding him was an exhausting exercise. Defenders would jump to block the first shot, land, and find Moses already back in the air with the ball. As Olajuwon said, there was no stop. Moses also possessed functional strength, rather than aesthetic strength. Charles Barkley noted that Moses wasn't ripped in the modern sense. He didn't have defined abs or bulging veins. Instead, he carried a density that allowed him to displace bodies like McGinnis and Kareem without appearing to exert maximum effort. This old man strength was more intimidating because it appeared limitless and effortless. He didn't look like a bodybuilder. He looked like a dock worker. And he moved heavy objects, which in basketball meant people with the same utilitarian indifference. Moses Malone's terror wasn't theatrical, it was industrial. He reduced basketball to a contest of will, stamina, and physics. In that arena, he had no equal. Facing Moses Malone wasn't just playing a game, it was surviving a shift in the factory of professional basketball where the machinery had no off switch. He acted as a violent bridge between eras. He carried the raw, unpolished grit of the ABA into the polished stardom of the 1980s NBA. And in doing so, he broke the will of established legends and forged the careers of future icons. When Moses Malone passed away in 2015, the basketball world paused. The eulogies celebrated a 3-time MVP and a Hall of Famer. But the deeper truth came from the legends who played against him. They painted a portrait of a player who wasn't just skilled, but physically terrifying. Moses didn't just play the center position, he occupied it with a relentless, claustrophobic intensity that altered the psychological and physical realities of his opponents. He was the embodiment of attrition, a player whose dominance came from a mechanical refusal to fatigue. Moses Malone viewed the offensive rebound not as a statistic, but as a moral imperative. To face him was to engage in a 48-minute wrestling match against a figure who never stopped. He turned the game into a grapple, a domain where finesse meant nothing and endurance meant everything. Kareem's yoga couldn't save him. McGinnis's strength couldn't move him. Rodman's positioning couldn't match him. Moses was simply too much, too physical, too tireless, too relentless. His mentorship style reflected this same philosophy. He didn't teach through encouragement. He taught through survival. Hakeem learned footwork because he couldn't survive Moses' physicality. Barkley learned discipline because Moses told him the brutal truth. Moses' terror was a gift that prepared players for a league that would show no mercy. The modern NBA has moved toward spacing and finesse. But the legends who faced Moses remember a different era where the paint belonged to whoever could claim it through force of will. And in that era, Moses was king, the chairman of the boards. The player who made Kareem look scared, who forged Hakeem through fire, who saved Barkley from himself, and who grabbed 2,400 more offensive rebounds than Dennis Rodman. Moses Malone's legacy isn't just about numbers. It's about the fear he instilled in the greatest players of his generation. It's about the respect he commanded through work ethic rather than words. When Moses grabbed a rebound, you knew what was coming next. 2 points, every single time, and there was nothing you could do to stop it. That's what made him terrifying, not his size, not his skill, but his absolute certainty that the ball was his, and no one ever could take it from him. So if you learned something new today about Moses Malone's legendary career, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. And let me know in the comments which NBA legend you want to hear about next. Moses Malone wasn't just great, he was unforgettable. And now you know why every player who faced him still talks about the terror he brought to the court.